teaching successes that you've enjoyed, I think will be important. And then on the on-campus stage, at small independent colleges, typically, depending what distance you're coming from, you can expect, perhaps a day and a half, experience on campus, and really some opportunities to see lots and lots of students. And for others, that are watching you go through this process, to see what the fit is with students and the interactions are with students, as well as colleagues in your own department. I think some of the ways in which that differs from, searches for leadership roles is that in a role like mine, there's a broader set of questions and responsibilities for candidates at a senior leadership level. And that's more about setting the overall direction for the institution, about managing the resources of the institution, growing resources for the institution. I think in faculty roles, particularly for kind of initial tenure track appointments, this is really about fit in a particular discipline that the institution is committed to, but getting a sense of facility and excitement about teaching, but then over the course of perhaps a lifetime, being able to contribute to curriculum development and all the other work that grows and sustains these programs and keeps them viable.
Thank you for all that. I actually want to circle back to a few things you just mentioned there in terms of when we were, applying for the position in terms of tailoring. I think that's so critical. And I know you wrote the article regarding, writing a standout cover letter, and then I'm going to talk about the nailing the on-campus interview article in a second. But I know you referenced a little bit about highlighting your interests and why you want to make why would you make a why would you be a good fit for that institution? So could you just kind of elaborate a little bit more in case people haven't had a chance to read that article yet about how can you make that stellar cover letter?
Well, it is about the tailoring, and this is the challenge, because there aren't a lot of shortcuts with that. It is taking time to really immerse yourself in the institution, but this is why I might advise that rather than taking kind of a broad scattershot approach and applying for every single job that is out there, part of the initial fit, the initial screening, is being able to think, is this an area of the country that I can see myself living in, that would work for me and my family. So if you are not, a winter person, or if you're not, if you're not a Sunbelt person, right? I mean, being able to kind of edit out some things, and types of institution as well. I think being able to demonstrate that you've got the flexibility to move from one type of institution to another. So again, I had the example of going to a public regional comprehensive institution, but the connecting thread there between that and my liberal arts experience, was the real focus on teaching, that those were still really teaching as mission critical. So one way you do that is by having a select set of institutions that you're applying to in the first place. And then that's a way where, as you think about your own personal teaching philosophy, the excitement about your discipline, what about it in this particular role? Ads are usually structured fairly broadly, but within your discipline, they're looking for somebody that has these types of specializations potentially, but also this ability to teach broadly introductory courses as well. So really speaking to how you fit that. And then I would also think about what are ways you can connect to some of the broader mission of the institution. So looking at the mission, the vision on the website, being able to see on the website, examples of types of programs, types of student organizations, ways in which student research, for example, is supported that you'd be interested in participating in. But it can also be good if you're able to kind of take a look at the strategic plan or other types of kind of vision documents that might be publicly available on the website, just little ways that you see yourself connecting to that. So I think even little efforts like that to tailor and point out specific things at the institution that are attractive to you go a long way in being able to distinguish yourself. You'd be surprised at how many letters are boilerplate and really don't have those touches. So they really do stand out.
I was just going to mention that, how important it is to to not have this generic boilerplate cover letter, because yeah, you need to stand out. So I love your advice about doing the research on the institution, because I'm going to assume that someone applying to your institution, Cornell, versus someone who's applying to University of Wisconsin, they are very different in many different ways. So
Mhm.
being authentic to who you are, but then also knowing what that institution, what their authentic values are, and kind of explaining how that could fit, is so crucial. So I couldn't agree with you more that I think a big kind of an error that a lot of job seekers make and candidates make is just sending out
Right.
a generic cover letter and just sending it out to a whole bunch, just hoping for the best. So
Right.
take your time.
You really do have to make the case, in the cover letter, you making the case for why you see yourself in this particular role and you see yourself as a good connection, what you bring to the institution. Taking
Yeah.
a little bit of time to do that goes a long way. If you offer your credentials, and kind of just rehearse the CV in the cover letter and hope that the search committee will connect the dots there, or it will be self-evident to them why this institution at this particular time, then I think I think you do yourself a disservice that way. So it does take time and effort to do that, but I do think it pays off.
Yeah, definitely. I want to ask you a question. You mentioned something earlier about, making sure that the institution is a fit for your family. So, I mean, obviously, we know it's illegal for, an potential employer to ask, about, that. But, and I know there's not a perfect time, but I was just curious if you had some insight in, what if you do have a partner that you need to consider in this, like a dual career search? How, when, I mean, it can be delicate. So how do you
Yes.
approach these delicate
Yeah.
conversations, and when?
Yeah. Those are good questions. And I'll say I'm one piece of advice, one source of advice here, but I would strongly encourage anybody, in the same situation to talk with your mentors, about guidance and advice you can get from them, people that have recently walked the same path as you, professional connections that you have, peer connections. So I'll just offer this as one piece of advice, kind of in that realm of other sources that you have, because these are very personal decisions as well, and there's not necessarily a right way to do this. But part of that is thinking in the early stages, some of the screening that you and a partner would be doing about where you're applying in the first place. And again, I mean, that might be geographic, places where it's a large enough area where there are multiple institutions, if you're both academics, or there are places where you discern that there could be job opportunities in the sector, that your partner is involved in. So some of that is kind of front end. Does this kind of pass the sniff test as having having critical mass of possibilities and resources there. But if it's the case of somebody else that is an academic, I think truthfully, smaller independent institutions, can be a little more challenged than perhaps larger R1 institutions with the resources to be able to negotiate a spousal hire, right? So I think I wouldn't encourage anybody to go in with the assumption that would be easily negotiated. However, and to your point, these are not questions that people can ask you. But as you're at the on-campus interview stage, it's completely appropriate, to be able, as you wish to start to share details about who you are. So this might be the place, just in conversation, as you move throughout the day, to be referencing, whether it's a spouse, whether it's children, I mean, just other circumstances that you want to start to surface for the committee. So people start to put, together a picture of you as a three-dimensional person, right? Because this, to have some foresight into your particular personal circumstances can also help kind of prepare, should an offer becoming what, just to have some initial awareness about what your circumstances are. Now, I would also say one thing that we do at Cornell in the search process that I think has been very important for us is we have what we call a faculty equity officer, and this is someone that's just really a faculty member that has a special assignment to be really focused on our recruitment and our retention efforts for faculty. And this individual is a non-decision maker in the process, but somebody that we designate for all of our candidates in our searches as a point of contact, just to be asking questions about, resources in the community, and that might be school districts, what the schools are like, if there's a particular, type of, worship service or religious service that you're looking for. If you are it's important to you to be able to send your child to Chinese school on the weekend. Are there resources in the area that would allow you to do that? I mean, the things that are going to be important for you and your family. So this is a way where people feel like they have a place to start to address some of those concerns. Now, not every institution does that. But you might ask, when it's typical to have a time with human resources, as part of a faculty interview. Is there anybody that I can talk to, kind of a non-decision maker in the process, but somebody that could potentially answer some of the questions I have just about resources available in the community, that kind of thing. So I would say, that's the best advice I can offer for how to start to kind of insert some of those things about you into the conversation, so they become, kind of, legitimate points to be able to point back to at the time of an offer. And I think that's more, then it doesn't spring up out of nowhere.
Yeah. I love that. That's fantastic advice. And I love that option that, there's a resource that you can go to ask someone kind of like all the examples that you shared.
It's been an important part of our process. Yeah.
Yeah. I could see how it would be successful. And you mentioned not only like, bringing people in, but retaining them as well. I mean,
Yes.
that's, you want that on both
Yes.
sides. So
Yeah, and I'll make this point too, that, and this kind of goes back to, initially, if this is an institution that has planned for this search and for this hire at least a year, but before you submitted, an application potentially or on campus for your interview, there's also, a real desire to make a hire that's successful, and that means retaining somebody, through the promotion and tenure process as well, and really wanting to make a long-term commitment. It is expensive, to have a lot of faculty turnover. It's destabilizing for an institution. So everybody is thinking in terms of making a successful long-term hire, and that means that these particular circumstances, have to be right. They have to be right for you. They have to be right, right for your family as well, or at least, something that, that you can reasonably adapt to. So there's no downside really in kind of surfacing, some of these considerations early, because it is about, that longer term success. And it can be, to your point about making sure that this is a right fit for you. It can be, because it can be very anxiety provoking to go through a tenure track faculty search, because the positions are very few, the stakes feel very high. It can be tempting to take any offer, if you get to the end of a search, and having, some of the discipline to do your research along the way and really be discerning, is this something that can be a longer term fit? That's to your benefit as well as the institutions.
yeah, well, thank you for sharing all that. And I know we've talked a lot here about on-campus interviews, but I was just curious about your perspective on this. Obviously if we're on campus, you might meet with a committee, you might go out to lunch, you might meet with this person, and there are people that are guiding you around. But what are your thoughts on how, and I'm not saying like people are trying to like set you up, but you're interviewing with everyone on that campus,
Yes.
be it a student, a
Yes.
person that's checking you out at the, register. So what are your advice on to tell people to, take that into consideration?
This is an excellent question, and I think kind of in the category of what do I wish I had known? What do I wish I had gotten a little bit more explicit
Yeah.
advice on? So this was a little experiential learning for me. But that is that idea that you are always on. There is no and that makes makes the interview process a really intense one. So packing your water, your protein bars, and all of that. So you're taking care of your needs because you may not be getting a chance, to sit and eat lunch. You're going to be on and really, probably facilitating conversation, with a group of students at that point. Or, a dinner, it's not uncommon for, some members of the department, to do a dinner, the night before, the night after, the day of the search, and not to mistake these for social occasions. It is really, you're on at all those moments. And even if you have someone that's escorting you, from one place to another, these are all moments, to make a connection with someone. What's a point of pride at the institution that they want to share with you? If it's a student, why did you choose the institution? Would you choose it again? I mean, it's a way for you to collect information, but also show curiosity and care. And if you make the mistake of, not being warm and friendly with everyone that you greet, register, at the cafeteria, or, a staff member that helps to set up your room for you for your presentation, that kind of thing. People notice that, and I think
Mhm.
especially at small places where, where they're pretty tight-knit communities. So just remembering, again, to your point, nobody's trying to trick you or trip you up, but you're always on. And, just to say something, um, um, it- you know, uh, or just to let your guard down and not recognize, like, those are opportunities for feedback that all go back to the committee as well as part of the decision-making process. Is somebody a good fit here? So those are really good reminders. Yeah.
So you actually touched on something I was going to ask you. I mean, I think it's human nature. We all kind of want to have like if we can have the answers in advance, or like the secret sauce to getting
Mm.
that job. But that's part of the reason why we're having this conversation today. So if you could share some wisdom of what you learned or you wished you would have known. I know you expanded on that a little bit earlier, but is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience on, like, yeah, I wish I would have known this before going into my interview or the whole process?
Right. Well, I know so many things. I mean, one I will say, that as a graduate student, and if you recognize yourself in this description, take note. As a graduate student, there are many ways in which we are trained, to be competitive, and to demonstrate over and over again that we are the smartest kid in the room. And that the way that we often do that is, an elaboration of our research. And so some of that, is still just part of the culture of graduate school there. And that can be, not well aligned with what, the life of, being a faculty member, being a colleague, at an institution is going to be like. So I think that comes out, in the campus interview stage, where, your fallback position sometimes can be, to talk a lot about your research, as a way to demonstrate, like, you're the smartest kid in the room. You're really, you're there to show that, that you're smart enough for the job. And I think, you are there, because, those questions have been satisfied. People are very impressed with your credentials, with the potential for, for your research, accomplishments that you bring in already. And many of our candidates, already have publications, have real significant credentials there. Part of finding out the fit is, how does that translate into a teaching space? How is that make you, the kind of teacher that can, make what excites you and gets you, passionate about your research, being able to hook students and get them passionate about learning as well, starting with beginners, right? And the piece about being a colleague is, it can get old, working with somebody who's like always trying to, be the smartest kid in the room. Just so being able to work with people to develop curriculum, to be taking part in shared governance, once you're a faculty member and making decisions about curricula and other requirements and matters of the college that will, impact you and students, requires, a kind of ability to listen, real curiosity and interest in students and their needs and all the, the staff and the faculty that you'll encounter. So just trying to demonstrate that, you're going to make that shift, you're going to be a good colleague. Some of this kind of previews Lisa's in my last piece in the series that's going to come out next Tuesday. But to really making that transition. But those are things that I would have been served by having mentors that were more explicit with me about how to make that transition. And I think part of what made them less able to do that was that the R1, like they still lived in that world, right? They had never kind of left that R1 space and had made a transition like that. So, yeah.
Well, thank you. That's fantastic advice. And I love the thought about, you don't have to prove that you are in the smartest person and you have your research has done this, because like you said, it's on your CV, it's on your resume. That's why you're sitting there. And I know we keep saying this, but the search committee is trying to figure out if you're going to be the fit. So I love your ideas about, going beyond just like, this is what I've done and this is, why I should be hired here.
Yeah. Is this somebody that I could co-teach with? Is this somebody that I would want to develop, a study abroad course with? Is this someone that, I would get excited about planning a new class with or engaging in some interdisciplinary research with? I mean, these are kinds of the questions, the frame, the lens through which different faculty that you'll encounter, will be looking at your candidacy, compared to other candidates that they're seeing. And the candidate who shows, that they already have, kind of a sense of that, that collegial mindset and identity, is going to have an advantage. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say that, the on-campus interviews went well, and you are offered that position. What advice do you have for this person that, maybe this is their first position? How do they negotiate? What do you consider? Do you say yes right away? What if you do listen to your gut? Like what kind of goes into all that?
Yeah, and this is really fraught, right? This is where a lot of things come together. If you've been doing this process right and have gotten to this point, congratulations. There's a little luck and a lot of hard work, that's gotten you here. And to be this close, and also feel like there's a real stark difference in the outcome, of landing an offer and not, right? That might mean that it's another year that you're on the job market, or that you're looking at, other types of positions rather than this one. So the stakes feel very high, and so the instinct can be, to kind of jump, at the offer that's provided, especially if there's, I think also understandably, naturally, if there's a tinge of imposter syndrome in there as well, like, oh my God, they like me, I can't, I can't believe it. But, kind of cautioning people, to tap the brakes and consider, and that you do have some agency and some options here. If you were lucky enough to receive an offer, I mean, everybody's highly motivated to get this across the finish line, right? I mean, this has been a process for the department as well, and for the institution. They want to have a successful hire and not have to do this again, on another cycle. So one thing I'll say first is just about salary, because I think that's the most fraught thing. There are ways, that, for us, I've moved us towards a practice of salary screening, faculty positions, at the semifinalist stage. We don't want someone to come to campus and then get to an offer stage and realize that we're quite far apart in expectations around salary. So I think it's just good practice, for any institution, to do a salary screen at a stage where it becomes part of people, who, again, some of the complicated lives we live, your particular circumstances, like, is this going to work for me? So if you're not salary screened at one of the earlier stages, I might recommend, that you ask about that. Is it possible to share with me, before you accept an offer to come to campus, is it possible for you to share with me what you anticipate the salary range will be for this position? If it's not already published in the job ad itself, and if that hasn't already been a process of kind of your semifinalist interview, I think that's a way you can do yourself a favor, right? To not be so far down the road where you feel like there's this gap that can't be closed. So I think that's best practice both for candidates and for institutions. That said, where you are in that range, I think it is reasonable. And sometimes this is, I think offers oftentimes are made verbally. I usually have a call with the candidate, and then after I have that conversation, I send the offer to them in writing, because I do want to give them time to really, to look over what we've talked about, and then if they have questions, and concerns, to invite their comment there. So that can be space where you're thinking about, if you're not within the range, where you would like to be, to be able to ask, is it possible to come up in this in this offer? There might be things on the CV that you might point to in support of that. But there are other things that may be of importance or interest to you. And depending on your discipline, there may be startup funds that are associated with the offer as well. And just having some clarity, about what the terms of those would be, like how many years you would potentially have access to those, kind of the rule, what they cover, what they might not. You might ask for and think about, opportunities for, some initial professional development funding. Something that would allow you for a year or two, to be able to go to your annual professional conference, in a way that, also helps to support, things that will be important for your promotion and tenure case, but ways that in a non-competitive way get a little bit of a leg up, on some of those funds, so you're able to continue with your research program. Sometimes people ask for course release. That's a little dicey at a teaching institution where they very much want and expect, that teaching will be your primary opportunity. So to ask for course release right out of the gate, that's more of a cultural shift, that you might stay attuned to. That might be worth talking with the department chair when you're on campus. Kind of, what does a standard first-year faculty teaching load look like? Is that something that's negotiable in any way? So that might be a conversation you have more at the department chair level, and having that asked and answered. But there may be summer teaching opportunities there, that become part of, I remember very well that transition from, there is a gap before the first paycheck shows up. And we were eating, peanut butter and ramen noodles for that summer. So for transition, whether it is, summer teaching, whether there's any type of reimbursement for moving expenses in any way that could be helpful at that time, are things to ask about. And then there might be other sources of support that are important to you. What kind of mentoring do new faculty get, just to set them up for success? Is there any on-campus or college-owned housing that's available that for a transition period might help get your family settled, as a way to make that transition a little bit easier than having to move into a rental or real estate market right away, particularly in some areas. And then also thinking about, just local school system, if that's important to you as well. Being able to have some clarity, about where campus housing would be, if that's on offer, what school system, would be attached to that as well. So those are all things that you might realize, are important to you in addition to salary, that are worth conversation, and just some tips on how to, to maybe broach those.
Yeah, no, that's a fantastic list of
Yeah.
questions. And I like the fact that you brought up the idea of imposter syndrome, because I do feel like that might get to a lot of people, and they might say, oh, I just got this offer. I don't want to ask questions. I should just be happy with what I receive. But if you
Yeah.
don't ask the right, I shouldn't say the right questions. If you don't
Yeah.
ask questions,
Hmm.
then you might be getting to a situation that, again, keep
Yeah.
going back to the fit, might not be a good fit. So
Right.
I would recommend that candidates ask questions. And
Yes.
I'm not sure how you feel about this, but if you get answers that are like, if they're rude in how they respond, if they refuse to respond, if they are just, if there's red flags,
All red flags.
red flags, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
you're interviewing them. So I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not saying, like, I know
Yeah.
we can't, like, some of us have, like, we can't
Hmm.
just be like, I'm gonna wait around for a job that's paying,
Hmm.
whatever, and we have to do what's best for our family, but you also
Hmm.
can ask the right questions and make sure that
Yeah.
you are the most
Yeah.
prepared to accept that
Yeah.
role. That
And I think there's a way to frame that in that, I'm very excited to receive this offer. I'm very excited about this offer. It is, I enjoyed my campus visit. I felt a strong sense of connection. I have these questions, that I'd like to follow up with you on. Would this be possible? Would this be possible? So you're signaling that, you are motivated to bring this to closure. And I would say, if you did have questions like that, I would get those out, in the first iteration, whether it's, a phone call or it's over email. It ought not be kind of a drip, drip, drip back and forth, like feeling like, okay, now we've settled this. Now I'm going to introduce a new, contingency or request. I would boil it down to what are really the make or break issues, for you, and to be able to, in a way that indicates, that you want to be, a creative problem solver here and bring this across the finish line. You remain interested in the role, to be able to do that. Now, honestly, you will have a little bit more leverage in that conversation, if you do have another offer on the table. And if you're lucky enough, for that to be the case, congratulations. That's not easily accomplished. But this can also be, something, I always ask candidates, or I say, to candidates, I want you to keep me apprised, where, how active you are in other searches. And if there's news in another search, that impacts this timeline where we think our timeline will be on this search, I really want you to let me know, and to have a sense of what other offers might be out there, what kind of clock or timeline might be on that. So some of that is, are a little bit of leverage for you as a candidate, to be able to set a clock on things, so to speak. But again, like in a collegial way, I remain interested in this role. I do have another offer in hand, and the points there that are attractive to me are this, is there a way that we can, incorporate those into this offer or do better on these points in this particular offer? Because, this is, your institution is, is really the best fit for me overall. So there are ways that you can artfully, kind of present, some elements of another offer. But again, this is another point where, your mentors, people who have walked this path before, can also offer advice. And to go into a conversation like that, I usually write out talking points and kind of a script, right? I mean, it's not a conversation that you just kind of want to wing, or an email that you want to just kind of fire off. So when you get to that point, like really relying on your mentors, to kind of have eyes on that, and helping you through that, that will make it feel like a little less anxiety provoking, I think.
Yeah, that's fantastic advice. I have one more question. I know we promised getting to the Q&A, but I do want to bring this up because it's it's a reality of a job search time sometimes. And I think we can all agree that job searches can be emotional. And I know I've been through some in my life that I haven't received a job offer.
Yep,
And
same.
it's, yeah, it hurts.
Yeah.
But, when I think, when one door closes, another door opens. So what advice do you have for someone to pivot and how, like take that, I'm sorry you weren't the right candidate and spin into like how they can better
Yeah.
themselves and move forward?
Yeah. Well, one thing, I want to start with is that it can feel very emotional. And I think the reason for that is to be successful, you really mentally, you have to go all in. I mean, you really do have to take the emotional risk of believing that this is the place, that this is the fit for you, and like emotionally commit to that in the kind of enthusiasm that you display, the time that you spend looking at neighborhoods, or like really going through the thought of experiment of, I'm living here. What is this like? I'm going to this cafe. I'm dropping my kids off at this school. So to like really animate and fully realize this life, and then have it very, very suddenly, kind of swept away, can be like very emotionally difficult. So if you're a crier, allow yourself a little cry time. It is a little bit of a loss. You've got to mourn that. I think if it might be cold comfort, but recognizing, how competitive these searches are, but also in the end, it is often, not, a personal decision, right? In the sense that, the institution is really trying to make, its best choice for what its best fit is. And that doesn't mean, that you weren't an outstanding candidate, and that it was just a matter of fit at this time. And as hard as that is, I mean, that can help take, maybe a little bit of the edge, a little bit of the sting off. And, to have embraced the search process, it really does make you stronger. And as you get right back on the horse, right, and keep, kind of pursuing the next opportunity, you will feel, kind of the experiential learning that you benefited from having gotten that far. And you will feel like you're starting further down the road and doing a better, an even better job, even stronger job next time. So it does, and part of this is a numbers game, right? I mean, it is just doing, a certain number of these where, one is going to be, the fit for you. But that, I think that would be the best advice that I could offer there. Tenure track searches in particular are very, very difficult, so you might also think about, if you kind of continue to hold out, that out as the preferred outcome for yourself, what is the length of time that you want to commit, to that process, a number of cycles on the job market. And, is it worth, in a parallel fashion, exploring, other alternative opportunities as well, just as something to, understand where your agency is, where your skills, make you, very eligible, for other types of positions, and getting, investing some time in, developing some networks, that can help you pursue, some of those alternative opportunities as well.
Yeah, no, I love that advice. And like you said, you do get better and you learn and yeah, dig deep and use your network and your mentors. And I promise we'll get to the Q&A. I just have one follow-up question to that, in regards to learning and hopefully improving. Have you ever had a candidate that you generally really liked and it came down to maybe two and that one didn't get it and you that person said, was there something I could have done better? Was there something that I was lacking? Like, how can that candidate figure out what they made to improve on? Like maybe they
Yeah.
goofed up on the on-campus interview or
Yeah.
something.
I think, and it's rarely, I mean, that's rarely the case, I
Okay.
I would say, right? I mean, that there's some, just sort of catastrophic or disqualifying error, that a candidate makes. Sometimes we've seen candidates kind of discover, through the process, that they've been exploring this idea of a teaching intensive institution, and that they're really feeling like as they go through the day, and that it's just really not going to be, the fit for them. And that shows, right? I mean, someone who feels like ultimately like their better fit is going to be at a different type of institution. And that's not, I mean, that's not a criticism of the candidate, right? I mean, a small, independent, teaching focused institution just may not be the right fit for you. And you're just an authentic part of the process, to have discovered that. And I would say that's more typically what we see rather than,
Yeah.
a mistake.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. So I am going to switch over to, I'm going to try to, looks like we've had some questions coming in. Leah or Kyla, do you want to jump in? Do you have you picked some questions that we should ask Eileen? Hi, Leah.
I'm sorry, I feel like my camera's choosing not to work right now, but yeah, let's try to jump into a couple of these quickly since we don't have very much time. Our first question is from Andrew. He said, I am interested in a teaching-oriented role at a liberal arts school, but it seems that most of the available jobs in my field are R1 institutions. What's your advice to someone who is a recent PhD graduate who would prefer not to be in an R1 school, but who may not have very many options?
Good. I guess I would be interested to hear a little bit more, perhaps about what your disciplinary background is. But in some ways, it's being able to translate the skills and experience that you have, to make a strong case for why that pivot to a liberal arts institution. We're certainly not opposed to that on search committees. Not everybody, has had the benefit of necessarily being able to, have a liberal arts undergraduate background to draw on, for example. So I think ways that you can prepare yourself, to make a strong case for that. Are there teaching opportunities that you can yet pursue that are more at an introductory level, where you're really trying to engage new learners? Even where you are, you might have opportunities even outside of your department to get a little more involved with whatever your core curriculum is, for the undergraduates at your current institution. At my previous institution, it was a small a regional comprehensive university, but we had faculty from all disciplines, able to teach in our first year experience program, for example, or teach in some of our summer bridge programs. And, certainly that was my first experience as a faculty member teaching a summer bridge program that was, an initiative to help students, make sure that they were fully academically prepared to start. So pursuing some of those opportunities to get a taste for teaching and kind of demonstrate your ability and success, with new learners, young undergraduates, could be a good strategy.
Thank you. I'm gonna jump to another one real quick. Do you have any suggestions on how to transition from a student mindset to a future colleague mindset during the interview, particularly during one-on-one meetings and informal interactions such as meals with faculty members? So sort of navigating that. I was a student, now I'm being considered as a future colleague. How do you navigate that?
It's a big shift. I love this question, and the fact that you're asking it means that you're already a part of the way down the road there. To suddenly, be in situations where you're with faculty members as a colleague, versus being at a seminar table with them and kind of in a student pose, I think is a big shift. One way to do that, I think, is to demonstrate, curiosity about their lives at this institution, what it's like to teach, what their teaching interests are, what classes that they've recently developed, how do they bring their research into their teaching. People love to talk about themselves. Academics really love to talk about themselves, as you might have noticed. So I think curiosity kind of wins the day here. And one of the strategies that we had, that we put into one of the articles earlier in the series, for successful on-campus interviews, I recommend that people have just like one of those little Moleskine notebooks, where they really kind of prepare for, each meeting they're going to have, the people they're going to meet, little things, just notes about them, what they teach, types of interests they have. But that can also be a good point, just as cues to yourself, to put down like some of these curiosity seeking, more of a, kind of a collegial posturing type of questions, just to cue and remind yourself. And as you're in the restroom between your next session and chugging some water and cramming half a power bar down your face, you can look at those questions and kind of prime yourself before you go into the next session. So that would be one tip to make that shift. It's a great question.
That was a good question.
Okay, I'm not sure if we have time. Should we keep going or?
Let's do one more.
We
Yeah.
probably have time for at least one more. Yeah.
Okay,
And
great.
I'm so grateful that, that everybody's stayed throughout the session. It's been a great conversation, Kelly, and glad that we've seen lots of activity in the chat. So thank you for your engagement. And these have been great questions. But yeah, let's do one more, Leah.
Yes, absolutely. So someone asked, I am curious your thoughts on visiting assistant professor positions at smaller liberal arts colleges. Do you see it as a dead end, or are there worlds in which 1 year or 2 year can be a longer term fit? In addition, is it appropriate to ask about potential long-term positioning of that role during an interview?
Yeah. So I would say the answer to the last question is yes. It is a reasonable question to ask, as is your first question, is this a dead end or not? The answer is it depends, but you are correct in intuiting that in some worlds, a visiting position, can be, something that can transition to something that is longer term and more permanent. That's certainly been the case at my institution, and that's been a way that we've been able to bring on some really brilliant faculty, and then as we're able to make some more permanent commitments to them. So it's a reasonable question to ask. And I think recognizing nobody's going to be able to make you any guarantees or promises. They'll be very cautious about that. But one way to discern that might also be, is there history or other recent examples, where a visiting appointment like this, has become more permanent, has been converted to tenure track. What did that look like? I wouldn't be overly focused on that in the interview, because it is a visiting role. But fair game, to make that ask of perhaps the department chair or the provost when you get a chance to talk to them. But it's also important to demonstrate enthusiasm for the role as described. And visiting positions can be less of a dead end when they also give you opportunities to perhaps take on a little bit of service work. There are different committee assignments that don't require tenure track or tenured status. Sometimes to be able to take on some student advising, or doing some independent studies or other types of tenure track faculty type of service that also help you build a case and not look radically different from faculty that were hired on the tenure track, should that opportunity for a more permanent role come. But that's an excellent question as well. Thanks so much for asking it.
Well, I have a feeling that we have a lot more questions that we were not able to get to. So Ilene, we haven't talked about this, but maybe you'd be willing to write additional, like we'll take the questions and maybe we'll incorporate a future piece, or we also HigherEdJobs does a podcast. Maybe we'll do like an Ask the Expert session, but thank you everyone for submitting your questions. We will pay attention to those, and we will try to answer those through various content. So Ilene, thank you once again for joining us today.
Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. So my pleasure to have some coffee with you and to talk to all of you. Thank you all for your time today. And I agree, but let's look for other opportunities to continue to support these job seekers. So
yes, definitely. And speaking of coffee, Leah, do you want to let our people that submitted the question what we're do for them? The questions that were read out loud.
Sure. Yeah. So we will be giving a coffee gift card to the people who we went through your questions today. So we have your email addresses and we will reach out.
So thank you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for submitting those fantastic questions. And one last request of everyone, if you can, you'll be getting a survey soon. So if you can complete the survey on, what we talked about today, but also if you have future ideas or topics, things that you would like for HigherEdJobs to address, we would love to hear from you. So thank you again for joining us. I know we're a few minutes over. Sorry
Apologies.
again. And we had such a great conversation. I'm sorry that we didn't get to the 15 minutes of Q&A, but yes, it was really fun, Ilene. Thank you again, and thank you everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Right. Good luck,
Okay.
everyone. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.